Welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we cut through the bullshit
Greggy,
so we can get naked.
you can't say that.
Why not? How would you say it then?
Well, maybe more like, welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we undress emotionally so we can undress physically.
That's exactly what I said. Not sure what the problem is. Welcome to episode
Number 30.
We are so excited today. We have a guest. Amy, do you want to introduce her?
Yes, I am excited to welcome Monica Tanner. She's a relationship coach, recently certified with Terry Reel's Relationship Life Training, and is host of the Secrets of Happily Ever After podcast. I am so happy to welcome her today for this discussion. And Monica, tell us just a little bit more about what brought you into this work, what you love to do, and a little bit about what it is you do.
Oh, thank you so much. That was a great introduction. I am just a Texas girl. I grew up believing in fairy tales and true love and happily ever after. And when I was 12 years old, my parents announced that they were getting a divorce. And so I was like, wait a second, that's not happily ever after. And so I kind of just at a very young age started really studying relationships and how to create happily ever afters. I knew it was possible. I just didn't see it a lot around me. So I studied it in college, and now I work with couples to help them ditch resentment and roommate syndrome and kind of learn the communication skills necessary to really live out their happily ever after love story. And so I am a relational life coach. And my book, which is called Bad Marriage Advice, was a really fun project I did for my oldest son, who's getting married in 3 weeks on my 23rd wedding anniversary.
Oh,
Yes.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So he announced he was getting married, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to teach you about all the things. And I realized I've taught him a lot just being his mom. But I knew he was going to get so much marriage advice being very young, getting married. And I wanted to kind of give him a cautionary tale meets beginner's guide to navigating marriage. And so that's how that book was born. And it's been so fun to write. And I just can't wait to get it in as many married hands as possible, because I think the principles and the relational skills in there are so very important.
That's amazing. So where would people go to find this book, Monica?
So you can go to the website badmarriageadvice.com, and you can get on the wait list. And then as soon as it comes out, we're going to do a big summit. Really, hopefully, maybe you guys will be a part of that, but it's going to be big fanfare. So yeah, go to badmarriageadvice.com and get all the information about that.
That's awesome. We can't wait.
Awesome. Yes, thank you. That's super amazing. Our oldest daughter is married, and we're getting ready to welcome a granddaughter.
Oh, that's
They've been
so
married
fun.
almost 3
3
years.
years, yeah.
And so got the first kid married, and now the first grandkid on the way. And it's just really fun to get those calls and to talk with her and to be able to have the conversations that we never had with our
absolutely.
parents, and be able to be so real. And also, she's mentioned so many things, especially lately. I'm so grateful. And I'm not trying to make this like a parade of our strengths, because we're also flawed. But that she is grateful that these are open conversations that she can come and have and explore, and nothing is forbidden.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I've been doing a lot of interviews around this book, but so much of it stems around communication and how important it is for our kids to feel like they can talk to us. The way my husband grew up, he really, he grew up where sexuality was just a super taboo topic. And so as he was growing and going through puberty and different things were happening to him, he thought he was like a bad person or something was wrong with him, and he didn't have anywhere he could go to ask about the natural things that were happening in his body. And so, yeah, I am really grateful that we have raised our kids in a different way, and hopefully they feel comfortable. Maybe not now, but maybe after they're married or something, will ask us like the really tough questions. So,
Yeah, that is
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Well, that's a perfect segue into what we want to talk about, because I'm sure this topic is going to come up with your husband and how it went as we discuss the differences in sexual desires between men and women. And the first thing I want to ask you, just getting out there so we make sure we're talking on the same topic, what's kind of your definition of sexual desire?
I think desire is just wanting. And I think we'll get into, lots of specifics about that. But also, sexual desire in women is so very important and it's so very misunderstood. And so I'm
It
Mm-hmm.
really
is.
Amen.
excited to have this conversation with you guys.
Absolutely.
So we like to talk about desire in the frame of sort of your innate God given map. And those desires lead you in life in general, whether you're male or female, what it is you want to create, that inherently you've been given desires that allow you to create. And part of those desires are also sexual. And what you're going to create and how you're going to integrate that your own sexuality with yourself, with another person, and what it is that you want to create emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, and all of that. And so we also know that sexual desire tends to be really high before you get married and everything's really exciting and you're like, yes, this is going to be so amazing. And then you get married and things tend to change, sometimes immediately, sometimes within the coming year or two. And what we see is a lot of couples that express their desire being so different, with one either being more spontaneous or described as higher, one being more responsive, described as lower. And this becomes sort of a gridlock issue for couples. How to navigate this. So tell us what you see in your couples and how you help guide them through some of those roadblocks.
Wow. Okay. So you said so much. I'm like, there's so many directions I want to go with this. So we'll just start talking and see where this goes.
Yes.
But for one thing, I want to normalize desire discrepancies because I think what happens
Yes.
is people get in their minds that there's something wrong if there's a desire discrepancy. And so I want to start by first
Mm-hmm.
saying that whether you're talking about sex or you're talking about how clean you want to keep the kitchen or how much money you want to spend or how tough you want to discipline your children or how often you want to see the in-laws, like it doesn't matter. There's
Mm-hmm.
always going to be a desire discrepancy in that you have one spouse that desires more of something and one spouse that desires less of something. And just by virtue that you are different people with different experiences and different preferences and different body parts, you are going to have different desires for different things, right? One of you is going to want to exercise, have more of a desire to exercise than the other one, or one is going to desire to eat more healthy than the other one, right? So it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what we're talking about. There's always a desire discrepancy, but now there's certain things that cause us to panic a little bit more. So like a desire discrepancy when it comes to money is more challenging than a desire discrepancy when it comes to keeping the house clean because people feel like you need money to survive, right? Like if we
Mm-hmm.
don't have enough.
There's more safety wrapped around
Exactly. And
it or
there's
more
more,
intensity.
yes, and there's
Mm-hmm.
more stories that you create in your head that you know, originate from when you're young about your stories about money. So people have kind of more charged stories around money. And so when you start disagreeing
Mm-hmm.
about money, like one of you wants to save and one of you wants to spend or, whatever, you start to stress out a little bit like, oh, this is a big problem. We're not going to be able to agree on this issue, right? And then, so
Right.
money is a big one that couples struggle with, and sexuality is even bigger. And I think it's because we feel like sex is a need for many of us, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
true. You don't need sex to survive. You need water, you need food, you don't need sex. However, it is a very pleasurable and enjoyable part of the marriage relationship. And so it becomes very important to learn how to talk about sex, communicate about sex, navigate negotiate, collaborate around sex. So if you just understand that no matter what, there's always going to be a partner who wants more and a partner that wants less. Whether you're even talking about the very beginning of the relationship, even if it feels like you both want it all the time,
Yeah.
there is still a partner that
Yeah.
wants it more and that wants it less. So just I think all that to say is let's just normalize that. Like there's no
Yeah.
problem. Like that just means you're in a
Yep.
real marriage with another real human.
Yep.
And sameness does not equal lack of conflict. Most people are trying to create this idea that sameness will mean we'll be safe or that we won't have conflict. And really, it's not as safe as it may seem.
Well, even more than that, some of the mind-blowing things we've been talking about is that really is where the desire is born, is between those differences. And we realize that if we were the same, we couldn't have that erotic, passionate energy that's between us. And that's the same, I think, with all of our stuff, right? If I always joke around about this, I said, if I didn't marry Amy, I'd be in the gutter drunk and, sleeping on the street. And I said, if Amy didn't marry me, she'd be born as hell. So, I mean,
Right.
it takes that balance, and we seek out the differences when we go and look for somebody. And it's totally natural, not only natural, but necessary to make a good relationship.
It's the yin to the yang, the masculine to the feminine, right? The high to the low. It actually creates a beautiful complementary balance
Yeah, absolutely.
if you don't view it as a threat.
Absolutely. Right. Yes, we have to examine your stories around sexuality and desire and discrepancies, right? So you mentioned a really important point that a lot of people don't understand, but that there is spontaneous and responsive sexual desire, which is all that means. Again, not scary, not like, this big, huge concept that we need to, unmask or whatever, but it just means that like because of the way men's minds, and I'm talking in stereotypes, they're
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
work-
We would have to
Men
admit
as
this every time.
generalities.
but in
Yeah.
general, what we know about the brain is men's brains are very compartmentalized. It's easy for men to keep work at work, sex is sex, sports are sports, they've got compartmentalized areas of their brain, while women's brains are wired very intermingly, like everything touches everything else. And so, when a man goes to his, sexual drawer, it's very easy for him to pull it out and be like, I'm ready to go. No matter what I'm doing, I can put this away and I can pull this out and I'm ready, right?
24/7.
Whereas
That's what I told
women,
Amy.
right? Whereas women, the way I like to think about it is, I know because this is definitely how my brain works. If you look at the top of my computer right now, there's like 24 tabs open. And so for me to feel like I can get in the mood for something sexual, even if I want to do it, like even if I'm like totally, I know it's time for sex and I really want to be there and do it, I still feel like I have to spend a little bit of time closing down the tabs in my head to prepare myself for that. And that's because of the way my brain is wired. It's all touching everything else. And so if I don't spend a few minutes to close down those tabs, they're going to get in the way of what we're doing.
Yes. And because, like you said, women tend to be so interwoven, emotional is very physical. It's carried in your body. And if you're going to embody the physical, you have to make sure you can emotionally be present too. Where men, they come as a one, right? Like physically and emotionally, boom, there, done.
That blew my mind. When I first learned that a woman could actually go into the sexual act physically and be separated emotionally. It explained a lot going through this, especially as we started out with duty sex and Amy not really understanding even any of her sexual desires. It made me understand how that could happen. But coming from that more spontaneous realm and thinking about it, like I can't even figure out how you separate those two, but you definitely can separate the emotional from the physical. And those emotions are so important to take care of before you can get to a place where you can see desire. We find it interesting. We talk a lot about with our podcast and our clients about emotional sharing. And we have this daily check-in where we check in emotionally every night. And we didn't do it for the first time, like in 2 years the other night.
Yeah.
And even just that one missing of not having shared that emotionals, Amy was she's like, oh my gosh, there's so many emotions that flooded into me when we try to be intimate because I hadn't dealt with those emotions beforehand. And I love how you're saying, close down the tabs. Okay, got the kids checked off, got the, whatever I have to take care of here, check off, got work checked off. And I see that happening with her and inside her and in her mind. And it's a great way to explain
Yeah. And a good partner, like honestly, for me, something that if you want to talk about Emily Nagoski's brakes and accelerators, a huge accelerator for me is when my husband comes in and knows that I have a bunch of tabs open and he's like, how can I help you close down some tabs? Now, whether that means I need to get some stuff off my chest, I need to make sure that the dishes are done, whatever that is, if he's like, hey, I want to spend some, some time with you and I want your undivided attention. I know you've got some tabs open. How can I help you right now? That's like,
Yeah, what can that transition look like?
exactly. That's like, boom, you just took off all the brakes. And like, I am ready, because that is so sexy when a husband's like, hey, I want to spend time with you, but I also recognize that this is how you operate. And so I would love to help you in any way. Come ready to relax and be here with me.
And this is where I find husbands get confused. I've seen husbands who are spontaneous and they think, okay, I have to look like my wife, and they try and force themselves into a more responsive. Or when they're spontaneous, they think if my wife loved me, she would also be spontaneous. And so you see that meaning, that story come across, that if my wife isn't ready to just launch in just like I am, then she must not care for me or love me the same way that I love her. And once you understand, no, we are completely different wiring systems here, and it's not an indicator of lack of love or desire.
The way you described it and the way I like to think about it is, can you imagine if two people with completely spontaneous desire were married to each other? Like literally nothing would get done.
Nothing would get done.
Right.
So I
Nothing.
talked about this just another in the coaching, and we like to use the symbols of a lighter and like fuel, like a log, right? And the spontaneous being, you click that on, it's ready to go and lighter, but you have to kind of put the kindling and you have to get it ready to go. But boy, when it lights, woof, when I told the men in our coaching, I said, if we had two lighters, that wouldn't be a very big fire, right? You could stick the two lighters together and it'd only be that big. But man, if you can kindle that wood and get it going, once it's going, watch out. You got all the energy you need to do there.
Exactly. You need all of
And
it.
I love the way you, I love the way you put it on this tabs, because the other thing I want to warn my fellow men friends is sometimes we get into this obligation things ourselves where we think, oh, I'm going to go to the dishes. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to do that. And it's just trying to convince our wives so we can get laid. That's the only reason we're doing it, right?
And wives are really smart and they map that.
Yeah, they can track that. Oh, they can totally map it.
He's
But
doing the dishes because he thinks he's about to get laid.
yeah.
This is transactional and manipulative.
With your husband knowing that's how he is, and to coming in sincerely and saying, hey, I desire to help you get to where you want to go. And that really did change for us with Amy. Amy's like, she got to a point where she could say yes, she could say no, or could say maybe later.
Or maybe
this. And it helped me understand those things. And so I wasn't going after doing the dishes just so I could get some. I was now understanding where she was at. And we both had this same goal of getting to that spot. And I think that's really important, because if we go in there trying to shut down your tabs as fast as possible, it's going to drive you crazy.
It feels like violating.
Yeah.
Agreed. Maybe the number one thing for the higher desire partner, whether that's the male or the female, to understand is that it's about freedom. If you don't feel like you can say no, then you're never going to be able to give an enthusiastic yes. And so when
hell yes, you gotta
when
have
the
hell
higher
no.
desire partner is manipulative, or they're going to pout, or they're going to punish, then there's not ever that freedom to be able to say yes or no for the lower desire partner. And it's like the direct antithesis of what you actually want.
Yeah.
Right. And usually what we find from the higher desire partner is that one, I think every single one that I've coached is we just want to be chosen, right? And feel like we're being chosen. And so we're trying to get to that point of doing that, but we are so insecure in ourselves. We come across as the secure and masculine. That's why we're supposed to be. We're so insecure in ourselves. We're trying to extract that out of our spouses. And we'll go to these extremes of manipulation, of trying to do this and trying to do that to get to what we want. Not because I don't think we're necessarily manipulative at heart, but we have this core desire of being chosen. And this is where our minds go. It's like, if she wanted to have sex with me now, that means she wants and desires me. Mm-hmm. And we can't get out of that mindset.
And we are tracking really well whether you just want sex or whether you want us,
right?
Or whether you want the toy or the vibrator or the role play or the release, or you want us.
Yep.
Yeah.
I found something interesting. You kind of brushed on the first of it when you talked about your husband. And this is something that I've really started chewing on a lot more. And I see a lot of the theories around processing emotions that go through this too. And I'm not sure exactly how this is going to play out in my mind, but just the fact is, growing up, and especially as young men, we were taught that this is a dangerous thing, right? That we had to control ourselves.
Your sexuality, you mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I, just like your husband, I tell the story of listening to a podcast, sitting on an airplane on the tarmac in Salt Lake City, sobbing because I was told I wasn't a sexual deviant, and I actually believed it for the first time. But it was really around this thought of sexuality and sexual desires as something to be solved, that we have to take care of it, that we have to have a release or do something to manage it.
And that's the need frame, right?
Like, and getting out of that framework really helps us understand that it's not that. Like you said, we can live without it, right? It's important, but we can live without it.
But it's part of a thriving relationship, but it isn't a need that you will die of starvation.
And I guess going back is that if we're in the mind frame of having to solve something, that's what sets up this obligation, this needy framework. I think sexual desire is something to share and to cultivate, and it becomes much greater than I need this, give it to me, or I have this desire.
Yeah. I think, part of what makes sex such a charged topic within marriage is control, right? Like, you're describing a lot of control, like we're trying to control something here. But also, there's just so many false messages about it that it's really hard to kind of cipher through what is helpful and what is really hurtful. Mm-hmm. And so I like, again, Emily Nagoski's, the way she describes your sexuality. I mean, you could use this for any topic really, but your sexuality is like a garden. And when you're growing up, when you're young, you have no control over what's being planted in that garden, right? So you've got your parents and your church leaders and, teachers and whoever is kind of a part of your growing up. And
planting some seeds.
Yeah. And they're just planting willy-nilly whatever in that garden. And then when you're an adult and you're in a committed relationship where sexuality is important, it's your responsibility then to go through that garden and to pull out the weeds, the things that aren't serving your relationship, and replace them. And you got to pull the weeds first is the problem, because if you start planting the good before,
and only your weeds, right?
Exactly.
You can't pull her weeds.
Right, exactly. She's definitely responsible for her weeds. But if you start trying to plant good seeds, so even if you're listening to good podcasts and things like that, if you haven't taken the time to really examine what's been planted, the beliefs, right? A lot of times when couples come to me in therapy, it's that, especially the women, but sometimes the men will have a really hard time in their sexual relationship because they're like, I feel like my mother would be so disappointed, or I can just hear my young women's leader in the back of my mind saying, that's gross. You don't want to do that, right? And so it's really important to get those voices out of your head, out of your bedroom, and like really take some time to examine, like, what was I taught about sexuality? What was I taught about my body? What was I taught about the body of the opposite sex? What do I find, displeasing about it? Like, where do those ideas come from? And you really want to pluck out, like, you want to take the time, like in a garden, to pull out those weeds. Make sure you get the roots, because if you just pull on the top, it's just
it comes right back.
Exactly.
It'll go right back, baby.
And that is a process that I've enjoyed doing with my husband. So those are, like, for a long, long, long time, we used to go for Tuesday sex talks. And we would go for a walk and we would just we would just ask each other questions like, what's your first memory about having like a sexual thought? And what did you do with it? And, we really talked to each other about where those belief systems came from and
Mm-hmm.
where they went wrong, where they, didn't
Mm-hmm.
serve us. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's how we plucked out the weeds. So it is a process. You have to do it for yourself, but you definitely can involve your
Mm-hmm.
partner in it. And then once you've pulled out all the weeds and you've rototilled that soil, then you can start, planting the seeds of something really nourishing and beautiful in a relationship. And my husband and I have been married for 23 years. And I would say just in the last probably 5 years, we're really enjoying like the fruits of those seeds that we've planted. Now we're really enjoying ourselves instead of still rooting through all of those negative
Right.
ideas,
Yeah.
like where, it's my responsibility to make sure I keep him in check and I don't want him to, get out of control, or it's my job to make sure he doesn't look at pornography, or all those crazy, terrible ideas that we're fed as kids or by society or whoever it is, right? And, I feel very
Mm-hmm.
lucky that my parents were very chill. They taught me, I got good sexual messaging, but my
Mm-hmm.
husband had crazy ideas about sex that weren't serving us in our
Mm.
relationship. And, he's told me many times, like, if you weren't so open and easy to talk to, I'm sure I would have done things that I regretted, right? Like I would have felt
Yeah.
a lot of
Mm.
shame. And so it's important to have these conversations, even though they're difficult conversations to have, but learn the skills and be able to have those conversations with your partner, because it does make a huge difference.
Oh, so true. And because they are so vulnerable, I see so many couples who aren't having those conversations and they are assuming different things about their spouse and assuming that their stories or their beliefs are helpful when they're really not.
Mhm.
And that first step of awareness, like you said, plucking those weeds out. I spent a lot of time in gardens. I actually love gardening, so I can tell you all about weeds, but so important to root those out completely.
Mhm.
And if you don't even know that it's a weed, then that's where you start, right? Getting some good help, some good guidance to figure out what is a weed and what is
Yeah.
wanted.
But that's scary, right? Because that means we have to take ownership of it too, and we
Mhm.
don't like to do that. It's much easier to say, "Well, church told me this,
Mhm.
all right," or "This is the guideline I was told when I was a kid," or "My parents told me this."
Mhm.
And so I love the theory of cultivating that garden because it's hard work, right? You're gonna
Mhm.
get dirt underneath your fingernails. You're gonna maybe even get some cuts and scrapes and stuff doing it, and
You can
it's
encounter some
scary.
bugs. Little-
Yeah, and it's scary work to go do, but like you said, it's same with us. We messed up this marriage relationship for a good 18 years,
Mhm.
and then same with you. This last 5, 6 years, we've been seeing this beautiful fruit that's come of the changing and taking ownership of our own
So
sexual
much
desires.
honesty.
Yeah, and honesty.
And the conversations that you're afraid to have, those are the ones you need to have most.
Yeah.
I mean, we were taught, especially as men, we were taught that we were supposed to care for and not ruffle feathers. And I remember I was in a meeting at church with men, and I was like, one of the men's like, "Well, I feel this way," and I'm like, "Well, you should tell your wife." And he's like, "Oh, no, no, I couldn't do that," and I'm like, "No, really, you should." And the pitchforks almost came out and drove me out of the church, and I'm thinking, your wife gave birth to children; she can handle it, right? I'm sure she'll be just fine. But we play this thing of how we can't really be honest about ourselves and where we're coming from or even our desires because we're trying to protect the other. In reality, we're really harming this relationship and each other
Mhm.
by not being completely open and honest, because if you're not, then your spouse really can't choose you because
Mhm.
they don't know who they're choosing, right?
Mhm.
They don't know the real you. And there's been many a times when I'm about to tell Amy something about myself, I thought, oh my gosh, that
What's
she's
she
going
gonna
to know this.
think?
She's gone. Yeah. This marriage might be over, but that's when it's been strengthened, is when you're really completely honest about each other. And I love the thought of cultivating that together.
I'm just coaching with someone today who believed that she really had to prioritize her husband over her, that
Mhm.
that was goodness. And you see that a lot in women, that like self-sacrificing, needless, wantless, you know, your spouse is more important. And granted, they are important. And I do want them to be a priority, but it's not one over the other. And as we followed this belief of hers all the way through and saw what it created her not being able to show up for herself, her losing sight of herself, her like actually being less interested in living. And so these things that can seem so
Honorable.
or like harmless, like, oh, I'm just going to make them a priority, actually can be very destructive and erode a relationship. And so as we followed it through, you could see the awareness coming to her, and she's like, oh my goodness, like I'm literally erasing myself. Like, yes. And if you want to have a relationship, it takes two people. If you're erased, guess what?
Yeah. That's really cool. Math. So this is like part of differentiation, but it's really cool because if you think about if you have 0 times anything, it's 0, right? So if one partner is 0 and one
Yes.
partner is 1, then you have actually 0. If one partner only shows up halfway and like only will halfway join the conversation, you just get a half. But if you have two wholes, 1 times 1 equals 1. Very important. So I call that relationship math. And it's about differentiation. And this is something that I think really affects desire that people don't know so much about. And this is kind of where Esther Perel comes in, like her zone of genius.
I love us.
You're hitting our favorites one at a time.
Yes,
here.
one
Good
at a
job.
time. Here we
I
go.
just finished
First
meeting.
semester.
Yes, I just finished meeting in captivity. And it's
I
really
love that book.
important to understand that, yes, you want love. Yes, you want safety. Yes, you want security. Yes, you want to know that your partner's always going to be there for you. And
All
you are
those
their
domestic
number
structures.
one,
Yes.
right? But that's like in direct antithesis to what actually creates desire, which is a little bit of mystery, a little bit of novelty, a little bit of unsurety, right?
Difference. Yes.
Yeah.
We call that the two buckets of marriage, that you've
Oh.
got to have the structure and the friendship and the reliability. But the other bucket is the freedom and the passion and the play. And it's not one without the other. It's knowing that both are important. Yes, you need the foundation to be able to create a relationship, but also that relationship needs life and it needs freedom and it needs to be fed. And that happens in the eroticism and the passion and the desire.
Do you remember Esther's quote about the house? Do you remember that one?
Oh, that a good marriage, a couple can buy a home and be naughty in it. They can be lovers and be friends. Yeah.
They can have that structure of the house stuff, but they can also go to be replenished in this other place, and that's the sexual relationship. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So good. So good.
I think for me, though, I really didn't recognize that both were necessary. And as I talk with couples, you often see one spouse who lives more maybe in the structured domestic side and one who represents more of that freedom and eroticism side. And again, it's not one over the other. It's like, yeah, you actually need both.
Yeah.
And
Again,
both of
can you
them
imagine if you had
contribute
two
to a
that were the
thriving.
same?
Yeah.
Yes.
Not a very big fire, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, the structure side of marriage, the domestic side, the buying the home, the being reliable, got more attention and praise as being like honorable or being good. And the other side of the passion and eroticism was actually almost diminished or seen as not virtuous. And so recognizing that there was equal virtue in both, that both were inherently necessary to create a thriving relationship.
Yeah.
You should see the look on our women's face when we have our retreats and we talk about going to the bedroom to be replenished and to have fun and play. And they're like, have fun, play. Like they can't even grasp that concept that this is something for them to enjoy, let alone, hey, we're going to go here and we're going to replenish ourselves or we're going to have play. Do you see that a lot in the women you coach?
Yeah. I think it's just really important to remember that adults want to be able to play too, and being able to use your imagination. Anything that children do on the playground, we don't grow out of that. We just grow into something a little bit different, right? And so being able to go to the bedroom just with our spouse, not including anybody else, and live out that playful imagination, energy, and feel safe to do so is just so important. And it's just like kids on the playground, right? Because they want to know that their parents are there, but they also want to know that they can go out and explore and go down the slide by themselves, but they want to make sure like their mom's watching them, right? So there's like that element of safety and security, but also that element of adventure. And it's the same thing with the bedroom. The best sex you're ever going to have is when you feel that really strong sense of safety and security. Your partner isn't going anywhere. They're not going to share these experiences out in the public, that, they're there with you and you're safe with them, but also you can explore and, have some fun and do all of that too. So it really requires both.
Right. We call that co-creating, right? Because especially as the spontaneous kind of high desire people, we have all these great ideas. Like I built this adult playground that had all kinds of fun things. I'm like,
three
come on, Amy,
stories.
let's go play. I swear it's going to be fun. And you're exactly right. Having this balance of we're together in this and we're co-creating this together has brought out some of the most amazing experiences in our life that we can really enjoy this thing together. And it's the only place we get to enjoy this, right?
Yeah.
Nowhere else.
And I think it's really important for the lower desire spouse in this, especially in that scenario, to know that you can adventure into a certain realm. Maybe one partner has an idea to do something and the other partner is maybe a little nervous about it, but they always have the opportunity. Just because they agree to try it doesn't mean it's something that they always have to do, or they can't stop in the middle of it. Or so that's really important. We, a lot of times in coaching with couples, we make yes, no, maybe lists. And we
Yep.
kind of work to move things from the no to the maybes and the maybes to the yeses. But what's really embedded in that is that you always have choice. You're never, ever, ever giving up your choice. So if you say, okay, let's try this thing, and you get halfway through it and you're like, nope, or you finish and you're like, nope, never again. Like those are really important to pay attention to. And you're not going to get punished, or, you're going to get gratitude. Like, thank you for trying that or whatever.
Yeah, we've so much put in our heads as adults that we can't. If we try that, we're going to be down Satan's slippery slope, and it's over. The marriage is gone. Like we can't put that together for some reason. But this is a time where we're grown adults, that we have the opportunity to choose, and we should trust ourselves a little bit of being able to say, I am willing to try, and when it's not good, say it's not good, and trust that my spouse will say that. And also that they'll trust me when I say that. Just changing the pattern in us of the way we've done this over. I still find myself kind of questioning me. Are you sure? We talk about how we put the goal as orgasm and how dangerous that can be, and how we've switched that concept that it's not about this goal we're trying to meet. So it's not, orgasm's not the goal. And so even at the times now, because that was so much the way that we did our relationship for so many years, that we can have this beautiful, wonderful experience, and maybe one of us has an orgasm, and then we're like, we're okay, but I still kind of go, are you sure? Like I still question that. And it's adults that we can have this idea that we can trust each other also about where we're at and how we really feel in this relationship.
Yeah. And again, I think it's the communication is that bedrock. And I think, you always want to have that element of, I just love our Tuesday sex talks, because it's like, how are things going for you? Do you feel like you're getting the things that you need? And, is there something you'd like to try or do differently or whatever? And if you're constantly checking in with each other, and I recommend not having those conversations in the bedroom, because you don't, you don't want to mix like the difficult conversations with the place where you play. So I say,
Yeah.
and usually those conversations are way better when you're either walking or driving in the same direction. So I also say, don't like go to a real fancy romantic dinner and be like looking in each other's eyes and trying to have like
Let's have this
sex talk.
conversation.
Right. Right. And so, if you can go on a walk on Tuesdays and talk about that, or go on a drive, just the two of you, and just kind of check in with each other. How's it going? Then you're keeping that communication open and honest and, going in the right direction.
And how do you keep, or what are your tips for the lower desire? They often feel under pressure of expectations, right? That they have to show up and they have to perform, or they often view it as work, or feel like because their desire is responsive and they have to be in the arousing context for a while until sexual desire shows up, it can feel more like work for them. What are your tips for
I
them?
think keeping that conversation really honest and open is important, because as the lower desired partner, you're always in charge. You're always in control. Even if you don't want to, you have like de
They
facto.
don't want to be in
Right. You
control.
have
That's
de
the thing.
facto
Yeah.
control, and that is a burden.
Yep.
It is. And
Mm-hmm.
so, there's not a whole lot you can do about it physically. Like if you're the lower desire partner, you're the lower desire partner, right? And
Yep.
so
Mm-hmm.
changing the frame in which you think about sex, the way you experience sex is going to be important. And the only real way to do that is by talking it through, is by saying, it feels like you want it a lot more than I do, and it is starting to feel like a chore. And for the other partner not to be like, what, sex with me is a chore,
Yeah.
like freaking out about
Yeah.
it.
What's wrong with me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, no, but being like, oh my gosh, I can totally see how you might feel that way. What can we change? What can we do? And a lot of times for the lower desire partner, as non-spontaneous as it sounds, is scheduling it out, putting it on the calendar, like date night and then Tuesday night, it helps you kind of, it's coming, and you can get yourself in the right brain space. So if that works for
Mm-hmm.
you, I think scheduling sex is a great option for a lot of couples.
Especially in our busy lives, when if something isn't scheduled, it falls off.
Mhm.
Just because we have lives that are so demanding and so distracting and pull us in so many different directions.
Yeah.
I just think
If it starts to feel like a
even
chore,
I
just
find retired couples have this, right? You think, oh, people are retired, they have endless free time. And somehow they're busy
yeah.
too. So,
And you'll always fill up the time. But I think just being very, communicative about how you're feeling about it, change things up when you need to. And I teach a lot of different things. I have a skill that I call sexy meditation. And so, if you know that you're going to have sex on Tuesday nights and Friday nights, a lot of times I'll recommend that couples, the higher desire partner, take care of putting the kids to bed, bath time, and cleaning up the kitchen and putting the kids to bed. And the lower desire partner can go do something that relaxes them or they enjoy, or sexy meditation, which is where you just listen to some music. You get in maybe the same position that you would meditate normally, but what you want to do is think arousing thoughts, or you want to, get hot towels out of the dryer, and just, if that feels good, maybe just feeling that against your skin, or, do the lighting the way you like it, and just like get yourself prepared so that you want to be in a sexual space with your partner, but you've already kind of gotten those juices going and you can prepare for it. So there's lots of ways. Or like maybe taking a hot bath is something that just relaxes you and gets you in the mood. Maybe it's reading a little something that, gets you excited, like what was that? 50 Shades of Grey or whatever. I had a lot of
Yeah.
wives who would read 50 Shades
some
of Grey.
Outlander,
Outlander.
Yeah.
Yep.
some Bridgerton.
Right. Watch an episode of your, favorite TV show together or something. Anyways, but there's lots of ways to prepare, I think, the lower desire partner. And when sex is good, so I remember when I very first started podcasting about this, I met, I would interview these people all the time. And this one woman, Kelly Casperson, I love her. And she talks about, like, I can't make you want melted ice cream, right? If the sex isn't good, it's really difficult to get the lower desire partner into it. So again, communication becomes very important. For the higher desire partner, like, what do you need to enjoy this experience with me? And then just really working on that, right? And so when you
Yeah.
get to a point where the sex is good and it is worth wanting, then there's definitely things you can do to prepare yourself to get into that space. And because it's going to be good, it just takes a little work to get there.
Right. And we just, we were coaching a men's group, and one of the men asked kind of this, like, oh my gosh, we have 4 kids. It's just crazy around here. I don't know what you think we're going to do. Right. One of the things we ever found too is that if we change again the mindset of what a good sex looks like, we can also do things that don't take a lot of time. We can spend 5-10 minutes holding each other naked. We can cuddle. We can do all kinds of things. And if we're doing those things in small doses, that also stokes the fire for that responsive kind of person to get to this point where at one point we will. And it's really been a change in our mindsets of being there, that it's not this end goal. It's this thing that can happen over time, every day, a little bit of time to help you get to where you want to go.
Yeah, it's kind of like
I
keeping
love
the oven
the
preheated all the time,
Yeah.
right? So then
yeah.
when you want to put something in, it's like already almost there.
Yeah. It's not going to take too long to get you
Exactly,
the
versus if you
fully.
like unplug it and have to start from scratch every time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love the idea of the meditation, because so many women, like you said, have to close their tabs. And that does take that shifting time. And also, it's helpful to think of how it is you want to feel in that experience. That helps you shift. I want to feel connected. I want to feel cherished. I want to feel adored. I want to feel loved. I'm going to allow myself to receive. And I think that comes along with Esther Perel. And she says, sex isn't a thing you do, it's a place you go. And that meditation helping you go to that place, right? Remove the duties, all the tabs, all the to-dos, and recognize this is a place you can go embody freedom or connection or presence or cherishing or whatever it is. Because I find responsive usually enters more from an emotional space, where spontaneous is more thinking of or experiencing more of seeing and more of the physical.
Yeah. And you mentioned kind of the performative aspect of it. And I think, especially as women, I know for me, I mean, I can talk for myself, is being wanted is hot for me, but also knowing that I'm going into a place where I'm going to be cared for, meaning I don't have to
Yep.
perform, like I don't have to do a lot of
Yep.
things. Like I know my husband's going to show up and take care of me is also, so if you find yourself kind of in that performative frame, like you feel like, again, if you talk about it and say like, okay, I feel like every time we have sex, it's like my responsibility to ensure you have an orgasm. And so I'm working so hard at that and I'm not thinking about me or whatever, right? Like if you can express that and say like, what I really want is to just come to our bedroom and know that, I'm going to be taken care of, know that I turn you on. And, if we get to orgasm, great. And if we don't, that's also fine, but it's not my responsibility to make sure you get there. That's also very like helpful for the lower desire partner.
Yeah. I mean, the amazing thing here is that it's made almost perfectly, because as a higher desire in the male, we love to watch you get turned on, and we love
Right.
to spoil you, right? That's what makes us most desirable. And this is the only place you can really be the narcissist in the best sense of the word, right? You can go to this place to be taken care of. You've been taking care of other people and other things all day long. Come to the bedroom to be taken care of. We had a friend at one of our retreats. She raised her hand because all the women were like, "Whoa, too busy. We can't do this. We can't do this." She raised her hand. She said, "Listen, he better take me in that bedroom every night and spoil the heck out of me, because it's the only place that I get taken care of like that." And it's such a different mind for frame. But the cool thing about it is that we love doing it too. Amy kept asking me like, "Are you sure? Like, are you sure? I feel like I'm taking from you." Like, "Oh no, it's good. I promise." And it's amazing how that works together.
Yeah. And again, I think just to tie a bow on it is just really talking about it and, making it a safe space for your partner to talk about how they feel about certain things, and you be able to, not get defensive, not get punitive, not get freaked out, but just really try to understand what your partner is experiencing, what their desires are, draw that out of them, and make that an ongoing conversation that you're always updating and that you're always checking in with.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was a blast. We could probably stay here and talk all day, I feel like, and we really appreciate your time.
Yes, we do. It's been such a pleasure, Monica. Where can people go to find your podcast or your website or your coaching? Give us that information.
So my website, my coaching, and all the ways to work with me are on monicatanner.com. You can find my podcast, which is Secrets of Happily Ever After, from my name, monicatanner.com. And then when the book is available, you will be able to get that at badmarriageadvice.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Like we said, we really appreciate it. Don't forget to go subscribe and like to the podcast. And until next time,
Keep undressing your intimacy.
thank you. Bye-bye.